Hello and welcome to Pathways to Success, the podcast where we explore the power of education, learning, and the unique career journeys that shape exemplary individuals. I'm Ali, a chemistry teacher with over 8 years of experience in education. In addition to teaching, I oversee the careers education provisions across the entire school, and I also serve as a head of year. Throughout my career, I've had the privilege of speaking to hundreds of students who have gone on to do incredible things in the world. Their stories, ambitions, and achievements have inspired me to create this podcast, a platform to share insights, lessons, and the realities of different career paths. This podcast is more than just stories. It's about creating a legacy, inspiring ambition, and proving that hard work and persistence can lead to incredible success. I believe that little progress is still progress, and as long as you don't stop, you'll eventually reach your destination. Through insightful conversations with professionals and students alike from different walks of life, we'll uncover the lessons, struggles, and the triumphs that define their paths. Our goal is to inspire you to think big, believe big, act big, because when you do, big things happen. So if you're someone who's hungry for success, eager to learn, and ready to be inspired, you're in the right place. So keep working hard, keep pushing forward, and one day, your success will shock the world. Now, I've had the privilege of teaching many brilliant students over the years, and today I'm joined by one of them, who's now well on their way to becoming a doctor. We'll be talking about his journey into medicine, how he tackled his A-levels and smashed his admissions test, and also we'll be delving into a little bit about some of the startups and tech and other technology that he's used to boost his productivity. Now, whether you're a student, a teacher, or a parent, I'm sure there'll be something in here for you. So without further ado, I'd like to bring in Vedant. Vedant, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background?
Yeah, first of all, it's absolutely incredible to be on this platform, and I think seeing teachers do incredible stuff like this heartens me as a student myself. So my name is Vedant, and I'm now a third year medical student at King's College London. I went to Herschel, and I was one of Sir's students for quite a few years. Yeah, that's kind of a bit of a background about me through my academic journey, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I can say to that, Vedant, is it was, teaching you. I remember over the years, it was amazing because you always came into lesson prepared with questions. You'd leave with, more questions, and that always led us to the next, lesson with a lot more questions to answer. And I've always loved that about you because, you were very curious about different, aspects of chemistry, and I really thoroughly enjoyed teaching you, if I'm honest with you. And I think hence why we're here today, because I feel like there's so much more to give, and you've been involved in so many things, and I'm hoping that you can, give us a bit more insight into what you've been up to over the last few years and how things are going in medical school, really, because I believe you finished your second year of med school now.
Yeah.
And you've been involved in so many things as well, so lots of projects going on, and I'm hoping to delve into that a little bit and find out more about it, really. So before we get started, I know obviously I want this podcast to be a bit about medicine, journey into medicine, and I want it to be an episode for people that are aspiring medics who want to learn more about the path, and maybe I'm hoping that we can shed some light on some of the journey into medicine, really. So what made you decide to pursue medicine, would you say?
Yeah, for me, my journey into medicine wasn't exactly like one of those sudden moments where I decided to become a doctor. As such, It was rather more of a progressive thing. So back in the day, I wanted to actually become at the car wash. Do you know the people who spray water onto cars? That's what my dream ambition was back when I was quite little, because what I thought was like they play with water, they have fun all day. And from that, then I suddenly discovered baking soda. I realized baking soda and water equal to big explosion, and the little kid in me started to get happy about that. So at one point I wanted to become the next crazy scientist. And I think over time what I realized was my ambitions of things I really liked about the world started to align with medicine, because what medicine kind of is about is you're a scientist and you can bring out the human side of yourself too at the same time. So that's kind of what appealed to me about medicine, and it was more of a progressive journey than a sudden journey, because I went through way too many careers before I ended up on medicine.
Sure. What would you say, like, when did you have that sort of feeling this was the career that you want to go down, would you say? Like, at what age?
I probably think the certainty started to come to me around year 9-ish, was when, like, because the thing is, before that, you say you want to do different careers, blah, 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 but you don't completely have an understanding of what you're kind of getting yourself involved with. And not to say year 9 would have much better of an understanding, but at that point I started to read different books about medicine, watch different shows, and that's kind of when I started to realize that this is something that's quite cool. And when year 11 or year 12 comes, when I can do work experience, I'd really like to see the ins and outs. And that's kind of when I really started to get into it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've seen over the years is when it comes to applying for med school, and some of the students, they really start stressing about what to do and how to prepare for it and what they should be doing behind the scenes, how much work experience to do, and it's always the same questions that a lot of students ask, and rightfully so, because they're in a position to make such big decisions, especially at that age, and not knowing maybe what they want to do, for instance. And they have so many questions. So I wanted to kind of ask you, what was the application process like for med school in general for you?
Yeah, sure. Do you know what? It is a stressful process, and I think hiding away from that or shying away from that is just not going to be the right thing. It's really stressful, and it's a bit frustrating at times as well, because there's so many different steps in the whole application to med school. It's not just you apply and then so be it, as much as I would have loved that to be. But your journey kind of starts from your GCSEs, in my opinion. That's when you start to explore different subjects in a lot more depth. You try and get the best grades that you can get, possibly because, believe it or not, GCSEs form part of certain medical schools' admission criteria. So that's where your journey starts from. Then you've got your next step as your A-levels. So in your A-levels, your predicted grades do matter, not as much as some people would stress them to, though. Because as long as you're getting A star AA above, pretty much all medical schools except Cambridge are more than happy with it. Cambridge is A star A, but otherwise everyone else does not care if you've got triple A star or A star AA. That's just one thing I just want to put out plainly first. As long as you're getting that minimum requirement for A levels, you've got a fighting chance for medical school, because pretty much everyone's doing A levels, right? It's not something that's going to stand you beyond, like, there's going to be incredible numbers of people with 3 A stars, but it's not going to make a big difference as such.
Absolutely.
Then beyond your predicted grades, then you come to your entrance exams. So back in my time, we had 2 entrance exams, the BMAT and the UCAT. Now they've cut it down to the UCAT, so there is no more BMAT, which in my opinion is quite a good thing, because now with the UCAT, students can just focus on one exam, get that out of the way, and it's less stressful. Otherwise, it just becomes unnecessarily stressful. So you do the UCAT, you try and get as high of a score as possible on that. Now, the way I see it is an entry ticket. So once you've got your certain score, if you're above different thresholds for different medical schools, you can then actually apply to medical schools strategically, right? Once you've done that application, then comes the next stage, which is your interviews. Now, with the interviews, what happens is medical school will call you, and they might be doing MMI, or they might be doing panel interviews, and essentially those are to judge if you're suitable for medicine, for one, their medical school for 2, and what their teaching style is, and also how passionate you are about medicine. So from that interview, you get a score, and different medical schools process those scores differently. So some will give you an offer based on your interview. Some will combine your interview score with A-levels, GCSEs, etc. And from there, do you get a offer. But the journey's still not over, because once you get the offer, then you suddenly realize I have to do my A-levels and actually meet the offer. Once you meet the offer, that's essentially when you get into medical school per se.
Because I do remember when you were doing your entrance exams and you're doing your tests, you're preparing for it. It was really stressful for you, and I remember coming up to your mock exams at the time, and we had a conversation about how you might not be focusing as much on your kind of chemistry at that moment. And I think, and we understand as teachers that this period of time for you guys is highly stressful, and it's really difficult to juggle between your lessons and your subjects and between doing preparation for your your entrance exams. What are some of the tips would you give to people who are going through the same phase as you currently?
Yeah, that period of time when the mocks were coming, etc., it was definitely quite a hard period of time, especially because the BMAT still existed at that point. So you had the BMAT going on during then, which luckily now doesn't exist anymore. But I think the one biggest tip I would give to people is, it's a bit of a weird one, actually. Stop thinking about things, right? Do you know what? This is something I got from watching Maverick, right? The film, and he's like, don't think, just do. And I think that's one of the biggest tips I feel. That's a mantra I play by myself now. It's if I know that I've got a certain goal, and I know there are certain actions that can lead me to the goal, I just stop thinking about the repercussions, the consequences, how things can go bad. Just do the action, right? Either your goal is going to be achieved, which is the best case scenario. It's not going to be achieved. But by not doing anything, it's not going to be achieved. So it's just a simple thing of just keep doing and stop thinking about it. And I think that's a one tip I would definitely give to people. If you know you're prepping for the UCAT, just keep practicing. There's literally nothing. 10 hours of thinking about what score am I going to get into the UCAT. It's not going to help. It's just keep doing it. You might just really end up acing the exam.
Absolutely. So, like obviously the current year 12 students who have just finished off for the academic year, they're going to be thinking about what to do over the summer break, or, what they should be doing. And I get this question asked always, is how much time is enough to give to UCAT preparations? Or, I'm sure you've had that, asked many times as well. So what would you say, or what advice would you give to one person who is currently going through the phase of, summer break, and, what they should be doing in preparation for their, September?
Yeah, it's a hard one, and I get asked that question like a lot of times, and every time I get asked it, I'm always a bit perplexed, because the honest answer is different people need different amounts of times. I was someone who lived by the extremes. I wasn't really a moderated person, so I just went overkill. So if I talk about my journey, I spent around 7 to 8 weeks on UCAT prep, and I was doing way more hours than could be healthily classified, probably like 10 per day, which I don't think is necessary, to be honest, for the UCAT. A few of my students I've seen, they've worked 4 or 5 hours a day for the UCAT, and they've done really well. Some of them better than me. So I really think it depends on the person. But the main thing with the UCAT is consistency. You have to be showing up every day. If you're thinking that, okay, let's just do it for the last 2 weeks, I'll spend 20 hours a day, it's not going to work, right? It's like the gym. So with the gym, you can spend, let's say 24 hours is what's required to get shredded, right? Now, if someone puts those 24 hours over one day, right, at the gym, they're not going to get shredded. However, if they put those 24 hours over 24 days, their body's going to actually see a difference. The same thing with the UCAT, right? What students end up falling into the trap is, well, short period of time, let's cram it. It's not going to work, right? Like, I can't be sugarcoating that. No, it's fine. You've got 4 days. You can ace the UCAT. Probably not, unless if you can, then you probably don't need to be practicing anyways. So instead, I would recommend a longer period of time and consistency. Whatever number of hours you're comfortable with. Practice is key, right? That's literally the answer with the UCAT.
Yeah. So I think what you're saying is, I think consistency is very important, and breaking it up and having a time frame you work with is crucial to success, because if you overdo it, you can have a burnout quickly. And obviously if you don't do enough, you're not going to be prepared for it enough. And so it's the right balance, striking the right balance. Would you agree?
Yeah, precisely. Like, do you know what? I think a lot of times students go to the extremes, right? So either they'll do crazy amounts or they won't do enough, right? And both of them don't lead to ideal outcomes. So I think for the vast majority, it's usually not doing enough. And that's something I've seen with a lot of students, because the problem with, if you go into YouTube, a lot of they say don't do X number of mocks before you give your UCAT, don't do the whole exam bank, or you'll burn out very quickly. And the fact is, 90% of the people are probably not going to be burning out when their preparation, because they're probably not doing that extreme. It's usually the 10% who are doing the extreme who probably will. So I think showing up every day is the most key thing. Even if it's like an hour, right? An hour of showing up for the UCAT is important. Every day you have to come. It's the same with the gym. It's anything in life. You just have to show up every day.
Agreed. I think a lot of people, they go through the kind of health journey, and they want to improve their, maybe weight loss journey, or get better at, fitter. And it's the same mistakes that we make, isn't it? We go there from maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the following week we're not consistent. And all of that, in the end of the month makes a difference. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think consistency is key here. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned about, how you spent quite a long time doing it. Were there any platforms in particular you would recommend for people to use in preparation for the UCAT tests?
Yeah, so I usually recommend 2 platforms. So I recommend Medify and MedEntry. Okay. And obviously I'm not being sponsored by any. I wouldn't mind it though. But both of them are...
I think they should have sponsored you, by the way. I think, yeah.
MedEntry, Medify, if you're listening, my student loans are waiting for you to help. But with that being said, I think both of them are quite good, because Medify is good in certain sections, MedEntry is good in other sections, and it really varies every year which is good in which section. And I get feedback from students, and they're like, okay, this year this section was very representative on MedEntry, the other year might be Medify. So I think both of them are quite good. I personally did both. I finished both banks, but I can completely understand, like, it's the way the world's working, the amount some of these platforms charge subscription fees is just mind-blowingly incredible. So I think getting either Medify or MedEntry, I think that's probably a smart move. if you can try getting both, but I don't think it's a necessity. I've seen people getting one and doing incredibly well. So I think that's that. And I think the one thing that I would say is schools should really be helping students out. Like, schools should be having schemes which kind of cover costs for, say, MedEntry or Medify. Like, it's all great saying that, like, look, when the students get into medical school, the school comes and celebrates and puts it on their newsletters, right? That, hang on, we've got so and so number of people going to going to Oxford, going to Cambridge, going to London unis. But the fact is, it's not just motivation that's going to help students, it's actually financially as well. There are so many students, like I get a lot of students reaching out to me on LinkedIn for advice, help, and one of, unfortunately, the main things that I get asked is, how can I get Medify and MedEntry for free? And I don't really have an answer to that, right? And I think that's where schools really need to step up and be like, hang on, we know every year students get into medicine. We're happy and we celebrate they get into medicine. It looks good on us. How about we actually help them with the platforms itself and not assume somehow our students will be doing well by somehow just being born with UCAT knowledge. It doesn't work like that, right?
Agreed, 100%. No, I agree with you 100% on that. And they need to do more, 100%. I think one of the things that, obviously, when it comes to choosing med school after they've done the entrance exams as well, is deciding where to go. So I know we've had this chat in the past, about where you wanted to go and how you felt about it and the rest of it. So I'll let you tell us a bit about where you really wanted to go and where you are right now in terms of med school, and then we'll delve into a little bit about second year and all the rest of it in a moment.
Yeah. So I think to answer your first question about how do you select your medical school now, because the UCAT exists and you don't have the BMAT anymore. Because with the BMAT, when you apply, you don't know your score, right? So you apply a bit in the blind. But with the UCAT, you know your score. So the way I would recommend anyone to pick their medical school is, one, do you love the medical school? Do you like the course? And two, let's just be a bit honest with yourself. With the UCAT score that you've got, look at Medic Portal, look at these other websites and see what were the previous years what scores were people getting as the cutoffs? Do I meet the cutoff? Okay, if I meet it, great, let's put it on my list. Do I not? No worries, let's look for another medical school. That medical school is rubbish anyways. At least you can tell yourself that. But that's honestly what I recommend, because look, your goal is not to sit in Imperial for the next 20 years of your life. It's not to sit in King's for the next 20 years, not in Leicester. Your goal is to become a doctor, right? It's to get MBBS, to learn medicine, to do the stuff you enjoy. It's not for a city you're doing this. So that's why I think we need to disassociate ourselves a bit from what medical school we're applying to and more to the end goal that we want to be achieving. So that's to answer your first question. Now coming to where did I apply? Gosh, it's been a while. But okay, so I'll put it in the list, in the order of preference that I applied by. So number 1 was Oxford for me. Number 2 was King's. And number 3 was Southampton. Number 4 was Leicester. So as a breakdown of how the journey ended up going, so I got an interview from Oxford and then a rejection from Oxford. I got interview and offer from King's, interview and offer from Southampton, interview and offer from Leicester. So that's kind of what was the breakdown of where I applied and what my preferences were. And yeah, I don't know, is there a certain specific part you want to explore? Or...
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes when you're applying for specific med school and you really, really, had high hopes of going there, and I know many students sometimes can feel very, hard done by when they're applying for a particular school and they didn't get in. How would you, what would be your response to how to deal with that? Like, how do you deal with where you didn't really make it into med school in particular? And what would be your advice on people that might have to go through that journey as well? And sometimes.
Well, okay, so that's kind of something that I went through myself. So to give context, I was the dreamer. I had a picture of Oxford stuck on the wall behind me, and I would be working and looking at that. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to be there. And that's kind of how my journey was going. And pretty much everything for me aligned. I got one of the highest scores in the UK for the BMAT. So at that point, I was like, 90% chance probably going to get in. But, life throws a 10% curveball at you always. And I think that's good, because what ended up happening was the interviews ended up, I loved them. I enjoyed them. I had a lot of fun in them. And then came the 10th of January. Still remember that day. And I didn't get in, right? And for me, it was like the world breaking apart, pretty much. If I describe it, that's probably the best way of describing it. Like, everything just went a bit numb. And I was like, wait, hang on, what's just happened here? Because
Yeah.
now looking back at it, I kind of stopped treating it as a uni. I almost started treating it as a passion. So I was working towards a passion, and I think that the benefit of that is you work very hard, right? The downside of it is when you don't end up getting it, it hurts and stings. And it did sting for quite a long time. I think for like good 6 months. Like even I still remember the first month at King's. Like there was probably somewhere behind me. I was like, am I in the right place? And now looking back at this, what I realize is it's one of the best things that ever happened in my life. Because the thing is, a lot of the times, especially people in my position who've done well in like a lot of their GCSEs, their A levels, you might not have had the taste of failure. And I think not having the taste of failure sometimes leads to worse outcomes in the long run. So because I failed then, because I did not achieve what I wanted to achieve, I suddenly realized that one, you're not infallible. Two, it's fine. That's how life is. You will sometimes win, you will sometimes lose. But what matters is you have to come and show again. Show up again. And that's what I did. I did my King's interviews, I did my Southampton interview, my Leicester interview, and I ended up getting straight through offers from those. I think that's very important to remember. Like, failure teaches you a lot more about life than any type of success can. A lot of my personality today is because I failed, and now in my eyes, I don't see prestige as a big thing. What I don't care is the uni you went to. I care about what did you achieve in that uni. Because look, honestly, every year you've got thousands and thousands of students going to Ivy Leagues, going to Oxbridge. But the problem is, a lot of the reputation for these great universities is based on 2-3 alumni who come through every few years. In other words, most of the thousands of people who are going to top unis, they end up having the greatest achievement they end up having is something they achieved at 19, which is getting to the uni. So I think it's not about just getting to the uni, it's about you've got in, how can I make this, how can I use that opportunity? So that's why I want to tell students, it's not about the uni, it's about what you do for the uni that you should be thinking.
Absolutely. No, I think one of the things you said is there's nothing wrong with being aspirational and applying for the best establishments or best universities or the best courses out there, and you should aspire to be the best. But I think what can be really hard is sometimes people can be demotivated after getting in the first hurdle in their lives, and it's really hard to deal with that. And I think you've kind of summed up that really, really well. But I know obviously now you're going to King's. So how would you say, what was the biggest adjustment you had to make from secondary school into King's to go into university, basically?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like I to be honest liked the transition for one, because the thing is I think you might remember I've really struggled with learning, right? It's very weird when I say this, but people don't believe, right? People genuinely do not believe me. I try and explain this to a lot of people. Like, in life, I've struggled a lot with learning. When someone tries to teach me something, I just don't understand it. Like, that's why in class, if you remember in year 13, there was a point, like, I would look like a lemon in class most of the times because I genuinely could not understand things that were being taught.
That's not true, Vedant. Let me stop you there. I don't think that's true.
No, that is true. In year 12, yes, I was quite on it, but in year 13, there were many points, like Abdullah used to sit next to me, and I genuinely didn't know what was going on with these transition metals. I genuinely had no idea. And the reason was because the way I learn is I sit down, I read things myself. I'll spend like something that might take someone, say, 30 minutes to learn. It'll take me 2 hours to learn. But once I've learned it, then I get quite a deep understanding, which is when then what I usually used to do was learn it first and then come to class, which then means I've got a good understanding of what's going on, a much deeper understanding, in fact. But during year 13, because I literally wasn't focusing on my A-levels at all, I never did that. So a lot of the times to me at least, I was sitting like a lemon because I genuinely had no idea what was going on. And that's the thing with me. I just struggle to learn from lectures or lessons. Like, it's just something I've had since I was young. So when I came to King's, we had this no attendance policy. So with lectures, you don't necessarily have to attend because they're online and recorded. So me being me, I realized that this could work to my advantage. So yeah, so essentially, I think first year, 4th week was the last in-person lecture I attended. After that, I've been watching the lectures myself, watching them 0.2, 0.5 speed, up to 4 times speed, and going through them myself. And that independence for me, I found I thrived in a lot, because then once I've learned it, I could come back to my lecturers back at uni and ask them questions, rather than being in that lecture and assuming I'm able to understand at the rate that they're teaching. Because look, those lecturers have spent, say, 30, 40 years of their lives learning a certain subject, right? Now, the speed at which they're teaching is probably not the speed at which I can grasp what they're teaching. So that's kind of what I realized, and I realized if I can just pause, play, and kind of learn through that, it's probably better, which is why I'm a big proponent of flipped classrooms, which I'm not sure if you've heard of that strategy before.
I mean, I have, but if you want to delve into that, it'll be maybe useful for people that
Yeah,
might not know.
so what I liked about flipped classrooms is where kind of students learn the content at home and they're designated how to learn that, and then they come to class, and which is when they can actually interact with the teachers and like kind of solidify their learning. Because the way I see learning is it's say we're trying to build a mold, right? We've got a mold and we've basically put most of the material inside of the mold. Now, for the end perfections is what I believe a flipped classroom does in class, which is where the small intricacies the teacher can then fill in. Otherwise, what's happening is in class we're trying to fill the whole mold with all of the material, and then we expect the intricacies to be filled at home, which is usually what doesn't really happen. And that's why there are certain, when hard exam papers come up, some students are like, hang on, we've never been taught this, because those are the intricacies that
It's
like your
true.
teacher had much better understanding of.
Yeah, if I can add to that as well, it's one of the things that we, and as educators, we always try different techniques with different classes, see what works. And one of the things that I have always preached from the beginning is pre-reading before coming to the lesson, and actually doing the reading for the lesson, because when you come in much more prepared. You are more likely to ask questions of things that you might not have understood very well. And when the teacher's going through things in the lesson, you're more likely to pick up on those, like you said, little intricacies, and hopefully by the end of it you take a lot more away from it as well. And so I think flipped learning is amazing how it works, and it's amazing because when you, as a student, there are various strategies you try to recall knowledge or understand something new. And as you mentioned, like in year 13, some of the concepts get harder, some of the new content is obviously completely new to you, and sometimes when we are in given new information in front of us, it's really hard to engage with it. But if you come into that lesson prior, maybe reading the two spread page on it, or let's say transition metals, for instance, then you're more likely to pick up on some of the definitions, or you're more likely to remember some of the properties, or you're more likely to ask a bit more detailed questions in the lesson to kind of delve into a little bit more. And I think when you do that, more people take away from the lesson a lot more than a person coming into that lesson without maybe doing the pre-reading or those two spread page that I would have recommended in the first place. So no, I agree with you. I think flipped learning is really amazing. I do want to delve into that a little bit more, but I'm going to come back to that later on because I want to kind of learn about your journey during A levels. But because we're talking about university and we're talking about your current journey in King's, I want to kind of delve into, if you can tell our listeners a little bit about your journey currently in med school. Where are you now? So I believe you've just finished second year medical school. So what does a typical day look like for a second year medical student?
Sure. So I'll take you through the week rather than a single day, because it just would make a lot more sense. Okay, so Mondays is lecture day. So this is when the whole day is 9 to 5 filled with lectures. Now, as I said, like some people like to come to the lecture hall and watch them there. Some people, like me, like to sit at home and with a mug of coffee, watch it on my computer screen. I would recommend the second, but clearly different people have different preferences.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens on Mondays. Then on Tuesdays, you've got hospital placement. So I was placed at St. Thomas's and Guy's Hospital. So I don't know, even Westminster, I assume, right? So the hospital in front of that is where St. Thomas's is. Beautiful hospital. And we essentially, half of the day, we're in wards and we're essentially shadowing doctors. We're taking histories from patients. History is essentially just accumulating information about what conditions the patient has. We're doing some clinical skills, so taking bloods for one, taking swabs. We're given a list of clinical skills that we need to fulfill by the end of the year, so we're doing those. We're taking histories. We're trying to learn from ward rounds, what the doctor's saying, what the nurse is saying, what sorts of conditions am I seeing. So that's what happens on Tuesdays for half the day. The second half is we get allotted a certain doctor or medical professional who then leads a teaching session. This could be, for example, teaching us respiratory examinations, cardio examinations, which are just types of like physical examinations on the body we do to try and figure out what's going on wrong with the person. Is it something in their lungs? Is it something in their heart? What's essentially going on? It's just another toolkit that we have for figuring out what's going on with the patient. So that's what the second half of Tuesday is. Now, Wednesday is an interesting one. So we have workshops or case-based discussions or tutorials, whatever you'd like, you'd want to call it. So it's you're in a small group and you've got a a doctor who's usually an expert in a certain part of medicine, and you work through cases with them. So there'll be a certain patient, and you'll essentially try and figure out what's going on, and the doctor will kind of guide you and push you in the right directions of what we're looking at, pretty much. And that kind of helps solidify a lot of the anatomy and physiology that you've learned. Because at King's, what we do is we learn most of the anatomy and physiology in first year. So we've got a very solid basis by the time we're in second year. So that's Wednesdays, and then the second half of Wednesdays you have off, and that's mainly for like sports, doing extracurriculars, just trying to live life for a bit. Then on Thursdays is our student selected component. So this is something I really enjoyed. So this is where you're essentially you're placed in a research lab. So I was placed at Guy's Cancer Academy, so in their breast cancer research lab, and I had Dr. Shiba Irshad, who's an incredible breast cancer researcher. So in her lab, I got to do a research project, which I was exploring NLR, which is just white blood cells and how they vary between different ethnicities for breast cancer. So you get to do a project, and I was lucky that I got to do a retrospective study, which is you're kind of looking at data after you've collated it.
Yeah.
Just to put it simply. So you get to do a research project on that day, and you've got the whole day for doing that. I usually spent a lot more days than just the Thursday because I just found it really interesting. Then Fridays is GP placement day. Now, GP placement day, you're with around four or five others, and you're allotted one GP practice somewhere in London, depending on where you live. And you go there and you get first teaching, so one-to-one teaching with your GP tutor. And you go through different things. Yeah, and then you also get to sit in a clinic with the GP. What's the coolest part of that is you get to run the clinic sometimes as well. So the GP will be sitting in the corner, and then the patient comes in, and I'm running the whole appointment. He's just making sure I'm not giving the patient something that they shouldn't be getting, kind of vibes. And once I've created the whole management plan, figured out what's going wrong with the patient, then the GP will just approve that and prescribe the medication that I kind of wanted to give. So that's probably one of the coolest things you get to do in GP land, as we call it. And that's kind of the weekend. And the weekend, thankfully, King's hasn't clocked on to weekends are usually free, because if they do, they'll end up scheduling lectures as well. I'm just waiting for them.
No, I think it's important to have a balance there, definitely. And we'll come on to that actually. Now, have you had any hands-on or clinical experience yet, or is that coming?
Yeah. So the way it happens at King's is first year you're preclinical. So you sit in a lecture room like 11 for the whole day, and you just go through lectures. Day 1, day 2, day 3. It's just lectures. It's not the most pleasant. And then year 2 onwards at King's you become clinical. So that's when you get those shiny scrubs. We've got pink scrubs, and you wear those and you go on hospital wards. So the clinical experience, the most cool thing I got to do was help assist a C-section. So I got to scrub in, and the obstetrician, she was so sweet. She kind of was like, "Is this the first time you're scrubbing?" And it's like, "Yes." She guided me through the whole process, and mainly what I got to do was retract, which is pull back the skin whilst the surgeon's operating. For me, it was absolutely incredibly cool. It was an hour's procedure, but felt like 5 minutes. Time flew for me. So that's kind of that. And then of course talking to patients, doing clinical skills like taking blood, doing blood tests, that's kind of more bread and butter. You do that quite often. But yeah, no, we get a fair bit of clinical exposure. I think that's the fun part of medicine, and being exposed to that early on is really nice. Now in third year we're placed 3 days in a clinical setting, so it just keeps increasing as your years in medical school progress.
Fair enough. No, I think that must be such a rewarding thing to do as well, being exposed to something new, first of all, that you've not seen it, and then you learn so much from that itself. And obviously there's so much to do over the next few years for you as well, and I'm sure you'll get right involved into it, because you've always been somebody who's getting involved with those things from the beginning. I remember I think on what day of the week it was, you and Abdullah used to make a trip to King's, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I think it was a Monday, or was it a Tuesday? Abdullah's going to kill me for this. I don't remember it. But no, we used to, it was a 2-hour journey because it was King's College Hospital. So it wasn't actually the campus. It was all the way in Camberwell. Yeah. So that was I'm actually going to be going this upcoming year for my mental health placement in Camberwell. But that's going to be an interesting one.
I think that's I think like I said, that's something I feel like you've always been interested in, being involved in clinical settings. So you will find those, I know for a fact you'll really thoroughly enjoy those clinical sessions. Now, I kind of want to delve back into that burnout thing we mentioned about earlier on, because I know a lot of people, this applies to, I think, pretty much across sectors, whether you're in secondary school or you're in university, med school, or whatever school. So how would you say you deal with stress and burnout, what's in between intense like med school studying and all the other things that you do also will do, which we'll come into in a minute. But like, yeah, how do you kind of deal with that stress and burnout?
Yeah, you know what? I wasn't really good at dealing with it back in, let's say, sixth form. Like, I lived by the extremes. I just thought we do the
Mm.
extremes and we just keep pulling it off. And it does work for a while, but then at medical school, because the thing is, look, during A levels, you're working very much towards a prescribed goal, right? But then at medical school, you suddenly realize you're working towards more how you're going to be living your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer getting a certain grade. Like everyone at medical school is probably like they've done very well in the academics. They probably will pass their exams. It's not going to be an issue as long as they work. So you suddenly realize the grades that you get from that start to mean a bit less to you, and what you start to realize is how can I actually be living life in all different aspects. And that's when I started to get involved a lot more with creating a balance in my life. And I think I've been surrounded by incredible people like Abdullah. I don't know if you remember Harman. Like both of them
Yeah.
always had an incredible balance, and I always found that inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of just looked back at how do they do it, and for me, what I realized was I should be picking the things that are really important to me, right?
Mm.
So for me, that one of them was the gym. I go 7 days a week. I absolutely love it, the love of my life at this point. And also riding my motorbike. So those two things for me in terms of like extracurricular were very important. So I decided those will be those are almost like blocks in my life which do not get removed. Now, beyond that, how can I now fit my academic, all the other obligations that I have for my academia, how can I fit those around these? Because a lot of the times what we're doing is instead we've got academia and how can we fit life around academia is what I used to do. Now it's the other way around. So I've got only two, it's not a lot of things, it's just two things. How can I fit my academia around that? And that kind of makes sure I don't have to think of maintaining a balance. It's just going to happen. So that's kind of the strategy because I, the person, as a personality, I struggle to get any balance. I live by the extremes, and I think it's not something that's good for you in terms of your health or even your emotional well-being. So for me, that's been something I've really been working on quite a bit.
No, fair enough. I think that's really, really helpful actually, because one of the things I wanted to also just kind of talk about as well was obviously you've done your A levels now and you did very well on them. What were some of the techniques or approaches you took during your A levels? Because I believe, like, I want to be a bit more specific here for that reason, on the basis that there will be a lot of students who are in that year 12 or 13 phase where they are really struggling with finding what techniques works for them, or what they should be doing really to ensure they prepare for, first of all, A levels right now. And I think these are kind of the techniques they can take into med school and other avenues in life in the future. So what were some of the techniques you used? Were there any particular technology software you used to support you with your revision? So it's kind of a loaded question, but you can give me like some of the top techniques you used.
Yeah. So okay. So like for context, first of all, what A levels did I do? I did biology, I did physics, and I did chemistry. I got A star, A star, A. And the A was in chemistry, so you're gonna hate me.
No.
But okay. So now, what did I do during my A levels, and what were the different strategies? So if we go through them subject by subject, I think that's a better way of breaking them down because different things are relevant for different subjects. For bio, I did something that's usually not recommended, but I think it works quite well and I stand by it, which is a lot of the times we're told just to go straight into exam questions. I personally stand against that. I don't think that's the right way of doing it, and that's just a personal opinion that I've held for a while. And instead, what I think is it's like trying to build a monument, right? You have to have the base bricks laid first before you can actually start to carve things out. By doing exam questions straight, you're trying to carve things out of thin air, which I just don't think works. Instead, the way I prescribe people to do it is read through the textbook, right? Actually try and get an understanding. There's so many good resources now. You've got free science lessons, you've got Cognito. They explain things incredibly well, right? You've got BioRack as well. And I would first try and get an understanding of what's going on. Then I'm a big believer of active recall, right? Which is where you can make flashcards. There are flashcards that exist. What I would do is write whatever I'm reading. Just reading a text isn't going to help. Like, let's be realistic, right? So if you're reading a paragraph, I would try and see what is a question that can lead to the answer that the paragraph is giving. So say if the paragraph is explaining how temperature affects enzymes, so my question would be, how does temperature affect enzymes, affect the rate by which enzymes act? That would be the question, and then I would have the answer. I pretty much condensed the textbooks into these questions. And then what I would do as my revision strategy is literally answer those questions. And when I would answer those questions, I would compare my answer with the answer I'd already written, which was the optimal answer. And if I hadn't written the optimal answer, I would write the optimal answer like 2-3 times, making sure I've kind of remembered that. Once I did all of that, what essentially I was doing was active recall, and we were doing spaced repetition, because every time you gave one of those termly tests, I was essentially re-revising old content. So by doing that, what I was doing is I was learning whilst also doing active recall. Then I think when it came closer to my A-levels was when I just started doing like big papers, just full papers. I didn't really go question by question for bio. I just went through the whole paper, did them, and started to see what are the exam strategies that I needed to take in. Because I was doing the mock papers, and I was doing okay with them, but there were certain types of questions, like graph questions, which it's not about the content, it's just how do you answer those questions more like. So that's where your exam strategies come into play. So I think both are required, but skipping learning the content just to run 2 exam questions, I don't think that cuts it for bio, at least in my personal opinion, because you need to know the content to answer it. Same at medical school. If you don't know the content, like, you're not really going to get very far. If you've got a car but you don't have fuel, you're not going to be moving, right? Same way with bio. At least that's what I see. With physics, on the other hand, it was a interesting one, because I tried to apply the same strategy for bio in physics, and it started to fail miserably. And Mr. Fatani can probably vouch for this. My first few exams for A-levels weren't exactly spectacular, but that's when I realized we have to pivot. And what I realized was, with physics, it's just practice. You have to practice like crazy. And I don't know where I found these exam questions. I think it was the internet's got a lot of resources, I'll be honest. Like, random schools post like a full, I don't even remember, what was it exam right? I don't know, it was something like that. They make full collections of questions, like schools, and they'll just post them. And then I ended up finding like a whole load of questions for physics. And what I would do is I would literally just, for any topic, I would do as many questions as possible, learning the content, doing the questions, question. It's calculations. You have to do many questions. And that's kind of all I was doing for physics, just questions. There were a few good for, I think, kinematics. There are a few good like old textbooks, which are quite nice as well. But physics, it's practice. There's no getting around it. Like, as much practice as you can get. What was really good with my year group was my physics year group was very like closely knit. So we had a Discord server, and till I think it was like 2 a.m. in the night, we would be solving physics questions. It was probably one of the most fun things that existed. I think nearly everyone in physics was on the server. So it was really nice. That's mainly my tips for physics. Chemistry is an interesting one, because I struggled with chemistry a fair bit, let's say. Organic less, organic more. Like, organic was probably the bane of my life for quite a bit of time. Like, the reactions, the conditions, oh my gosh, it did not clock to me. And I think what really started to help was looking at those, do you know those flowcharts that for the reactants, the conditions? What I started doing was, I had that, and I would basically rewrite the whole thing every night. Sounds extremely boring, but it actually works, right? If you just keep writing it down every single night, you end up remembering. It's the same thing I did for medical school. Like, we had to remember every single amino acid. Their structures. Like, oh my god, I don't remember them anymore because it was pre-clin, but we had to remember every single one. And it's not fun, right? So what I did was I ended up just drawing them all out every night for a good 2 months, and you end up learning it. So the same way with reactants, conditions, and unfortunately transition metal colors too. You literally just do it every night, and you end up remembering it. But with inorganic chemistry, I think one thing that was very important was doing a lot of questions. You had to do questions. There's no way around it. Like, because when your exam comes, you're already so stressed out. And if you're having to think about how do I approach this question too much, you end up panicking. And if you've done enough of those inorganic chemistry questions, I think one thing that you really do well in your classes is give those worksheets. I think that's really, really good, because all you kind of have to do is those worksheets, and just many times, like, do those same questions like 10 times. You're never going to struggle with another question that looks similar to that. Because let's just be honest, right? Most A-level papers are like slight repetitions of one another over years. So it's kind of slight patterns in chemistry that you just have to practice for.
Okay, no, that's really helpful. I think you talked about so many different techniques there, and you're very specific with different subjects of what you did work for you. And I think, again, everyone is different. And so everyone
Oh,
should try
100%.
out different techniques, and we could have a whole video on the different techniques you could use, isn't it? And I think you
No,
kind of
100%. Like,
summed up some of the really good ones just to kind of make it
yeah,
clear.
like I'll be honest with this, right? So Abdullah used to sit next to me, right?
Mm.
In bio, for example, the one that I'm so extreme about, and he did exactly the opposite thing. He did exam questions for the whole time. He did not touch a textbook in his life, right?
Mm.
And we got the same score pretty much in our A
Mm.
levels, and that's what it goes down to. It's what works for you. What we shouldn't be doing is prescribing this is the only thing that will work, or
Yeah.
this will not work by definition.
Yeah.
You just need to A/B test, try it. Okay, this works, this doesn't work. Fine, let's move on.
Yeah.
Everyone's individual. Like, I remember I struggled with maths like crazy at GCSE, and what I eventually realized was, like, I had some incredibly smart mathematicians sitting next to me, and I would look at them. I would think, if I do the amount of work they do, I will get the outcome that they get. It's not true, because I had to do considerably more work to get the achievement that they get. And I think it's just recognizing we're not all equal
Yeah.
in our
Yeah.
learning journeys, and we're at
Absolutely.
different places. So
Absolutely.
just personalizing what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think to kind of summarize what you're saying is, I think people need to try a more active form of learning in general, as opposed to thinking everything's just going to happen. A lot of people sometimes ask, like, "Oh, but I've been revising, I've been doing all the work, I've done all the past paper questions, but I'm not doing well in it." But I think they need to sit down and take a step back sometimes and see what is it that they're exactly doing. Is what they're doing is actually a revision, or are they just reading a textbook over and over again? Because that's not going to stick, if I'm honest. And I think they need to start re-evaluating all the different techniques that they're using, so that they can see what works, what doesn't work, and then do the ones obviously that works for them. And I think you've summarized that really, really well, actually. Now, I think we've talked a lot about, like, different pathways in medicine and stuff like that. But one question I've been I know you've always been into researching about future advancements and what's going to come in the future, or future developments in general. What would you say the future of medicine looks like, and are there any particular advancements or trends that you've
Yeah, no, I think I've been really lucky with some of the research experiences that I've had at King's to be seeing some really, really crazy stuff being done. So I think what's really, really interesting to me right now is personalization of medicine. So currently, a lot of the times, how medicine currently is run is you've got guidelines, right? And as per those guidelines, we end up prescribing different drugs, different medication, dosages, blah, blah, blah. The one frontier we haven't crossed in medicine is where it's personalized to you completely. So, for example, like, we've got so many different gadgets around us. We've got our Apple Watches, etc. But the problem is those aren't leading to medical outcomes. Apple's slowly moving towards that, like by being able to detect if you've got atrial fibrillation, etc. But having a dashboard where all of those different biometrics come into play, as well as your, for example, blood test results, when all of those things synergize together, is what I think the future of medicine is. Where pretty much your medical care is personalized towards you. And we've started to see some of the early indications of that, to be honest. I'm not sure if you've seen Brian Johnson, the person trying to optimize his life. So almost as extreme as he sounds, essentially what he's doing is he's taking his biomarkers and he's combining them with actual medical knowledge about his body and seeing how can I improve my body. And I think that's where over maybe 10, 20 years, medicine might be heading, where we're able to personalize the care we're providing for each person. Because the thing is, with medicine, a lot of the times we consider like medicine to be some of the most wacky things, like treating cancer, heart transplants. But the fact is, most people will never end up being exposed to that, at least not until they're very old. What medicine truly for most people is the small things. How can I exercise better? Right? How can I sleep better? And these things, when we start to integrate different biometrics together, that's when we're going to improve that. So to answer your question, I think medicine is moving towards a personalized era where medicine is for you, not a generalized thing.
Amazing. I think one of the things recently I've been really involved in following works of other people is on LinkedIn. And I've been following the works that you've been doing, and so you've been involved in so many projects, and I wanted to kind of nicely lines up with this previous answer you've given. I saw you've been involved in some startup with some of the other students, and I really wanted to kind of delve into that a little bit because it looks really interesting, and I've been following the works you've been doing with that. So can you tell us a little bit about what is this startup that you guys have kind of been working on, and what does it look like at the moment, and how does the future look with it? So tell us a little bit more about that. That'd be really helpful.
Yeah, no, 100%. So that's something that like I'm really, really, really passionate about. So the startup's called Leah. So essentially what Leah does is it does exactly what I was just talking about. So currently we've got
So before you go into Leah and telling us about it, what was it that you did to what was the project that you were involved in to get this startup running?
Okay,
'Cause
okay. So the
I
history
think it would be
behind.
nice to share that, because I feel like
Okay.
what I saw your journey through that was really inspiring, because a lot of people, when it comes to getting involved with maybe projects or competitions or, all these things that are out there, extracurricular, people just kind of don't get involved maybe. But I feel
Mhm.
like you've always been a person who takes things with a grasp and you always get involved. So what was it that led to Leah? Like, what was the project, and how did you get to
Yeah.
where you are right now?
Okay, so as a brief history of it, yeah. So essentially, the startup wasn't actually meant to be a startup by any means.
Hmm.
So what essentially how this ended up happening was I was doing research in the breast cancer lab for my student selected component, and what I started to see there was a lot of women were quite young, like 35, and they were being diagnosed with terminal breast cancer. And for me, that kind of really kind of struck a chord. I was like, breast cancer is one of the most treatable cancers that's out there, and the fact that a lot of young women are dying from it, that just kind of really puzzled me a bit. And the main reason for that was late detection. A lot of women simply weren't coming into clinics early enough, and that's when I realized that there's something in women's health, and there are areas in women's health that need to be improved. So I was talking to one of my close friends, Abhinav. He's another medical student at King's, and I just mentioned this to him, and he was like, sitting in the cafe, I quote him, "Let's just do something, right?" And I just looked at him and I was like, "Wait, hang on, what?" He was like, "I'll take 50%." I was like, "Wait, what?" And that's kind of where we started from. So we started to come up with different. We started to look into women's health. What are the areas that really require improvement, and what are areas that as medical students we can actually help out with? And that's when I ended up mentioning it to Nivedya, who is another Herschel alumnus, incredible person again. And she was like, "I'm really passionate about women's health myself." And one of the things that she'd identified was with period tracking apps, that she felt they weren't that personalized for our age group, pretty much.
Hmm.
A lot of them are aimed for older women to, for example, getting pregnant, and that's the main outcome that those period trackers like Flow and Clue usually provide. And that's when we started to work on that, and that's when we got involved with Samsung. So Samsung was running their Solve for Tomorrow initiative. I really recommend any young entrepreneurs to get involved with that. So we ended up applying, and on a certain day in January, I ended up getting email that we got in. And look, this whole thing was started off from just someone saying, "Let's just do it," right? And so I wasn't really expecting much. And when it did go through, we are like, "Hang on, this might actually be something." So then we got involved with their workshop, a lot of their one-to-one sessions. We went to Samsung's European headquarters as well, and then we ended up finding ourselves in King's Cross in central London at Samsung's flagship center, and we were pitching to the chief customer officer for the whole of Samsung. So that was quite incredible, and we ended up coming second place for that, and we got a £1,000 investment grant for the actual startup. At that point is when we also got Hassan involved, another incredible Herschel alumnus, and that's essentially where we've been working from as a history. And now what we're currently in the works of developing is Leah, which is a women's health app. And what do you kind of want me to go through what Leah is as
Yeah, I
well,
think it'll
or
be nice for
any
our
questions
listeners.
first?
Yeah, I think first of all, kind of summarize and add to what you've said is so important. Like, great ideas and great things don't happen just like that. They come from somewhere. And so, you guys have, sat there in a cafe and this thing's propped up on your mind, and look where you brought it to already. And so I think for people out there, like, if there's something that comes to mind, try to put it into play, like do something about it, take action. And I think for yourselves, like with this whole initiative with Samsung and how you guys have gone and pitched this idea to the chief officer of Samsung, and amazing, that's such a great experience in itself. And so, and if for people out there, I would say get involved with these kind of things, because a lot of the times as a careers lead, I share lots of opportunities with young people, like this is available to you, or there's this you can get involved in, or have you seen this that's kind of currently being advertised by this particular employer, or whatever it may be. I think I would say get involved, because you don't know where it can take you with it, first of all.
100%. Like,
Yeah,
you
go
know,
on.
100%. Like some of the I still remember you would post a lot of those different like competition opportunities
Yeah.
on. I think it was a weekly email you used to send, and I definitely would say just try it. As I say with the Maverick quote, it's just don't think, just do it. Like if you think too much, you're never going to do something. Just do it.
Absolutely, exactly.
If you know it's the right thing to do, just go for it. What's the
Absolutely.
worst that can happen?
Yeah, no, definitely. So now that we've kind of come to this place where you've got this Leah startup project that you've got going on. So if you tell us a little bit more about that, so our listeners can maybe find out more about it as well and know a bit more about what you're doing behind the scenes at the moment with Leah.
Yeah, no, 100%. So what's Leah first of all? So Leah essentially takes all of your hormonal data, your period data, menstrual cycle data, how you're sleeping, your heart rate, and it essentially combines all of that data using machine learning and algorithms to essentially work out to provide you three outcomes. The first outcome we provide is your focus. So how is your actual focus as a woman going to be varying throughout the day? Right, so what part of the day are you most likely to be focused? And what we can essentially do using AI is we can help you optimize your study schedule or your work schedule. So if you know you've got certain assignments, rather than you trying to do it at a random point in your day, what we're doing is we're leveraging your actual biometrics to help you identify when's the best time for your brain to quickly get this task done, right? So that's how we're using our focus. Those are called focus slots in Leah. And we also see how your focus and your different personality traits for working and productivity vary throughout the month. And we help you essentially plan different tasks and when you're best primed to be doing different academic tasks. So you're never working against your body and you're working with your body. The second outcome that Leah provides by using your hormones and your menstrual cycle is for exercise. So one of the major concerns we found from a lot of women and girls was that they end up going to the gym, but they don't actually know what they should be doing. And when they do end up doing certain things, they sometimes feel they're working against their body. So instead, what we're doing is we identify what type of workout is best primed for a certain day in your menstrual cycle, because progesterone, estrogen, they can affect your body, they can affect your muscles, they can affect how you're feeling pretty much as a whole. So we optimize, for example, strength training on certain days, maybe in your luteal phase, in your follicular phase, and we essentially provide you breakdowns of workouts which you can follow and are personalized towards your body. So that's the exercise section, and the final section is your nutrition section. And the nutrition section, as per where you're on your period and how your hormones are, we help you optimize your diet and help cater it to make it better, pretty much. So, for example, a lot of women during their menses phase, which is when they're bleeding during their period, they end up losing a lot of iron and they become anemic. So one of the things that we do in that phase is our app recommends a diet which is much more rich in iron, and this helps. This is essentially a nutritionist in your pocket, pretty much, who understands your biology. And essentially, we're trying to shift period trackers away from just being a diary to something that can actually impact and improve your health.
Okay, yeah, amazing. I think so. You're kind of incorporating so many things in one place, so people can actually access this information much more easily, and it kind of gives you one place or one solution for everything. Yeah, absolutely.
We're
amazing.
A period tracker, we're a productivity app, and a nutritionist in one place.
So where are you
that
with that?
Actually understands you.
Absolutely amazing. So where are you with that? Can people already get involved with that, or like what stage is that at the moment?
Yeah. So essentially, where we are right now as we speak is we've got our beta waiting list currently live, and we will be releasing our large ad on Thursday of this week. So that's where everyone will be able to actually understand how Leah works and what are the different features of it. And we will be starting our first beta testing phase Thursday onwards. So that's where a small number of users can actually start to use our app and provide us feedback. After a week or two, after the first initial beta phase, that's when we will open the testing phase to everyone else who's present on the waitlist, so that they can start to use and actually benefit from the app. Now, with a lot of startups, what we're hoping to do is raise a pre-seed round soon, which is a type of investment. So we're hoping if we can get as much traction and as much love for the app, we can show this to investors. And this can help us actually raise investment, which is really required to help the startup improve.
Yeah, amazing. Obviously it's important to, I think, share where people can find more about this, for especially investors as well, getting involved in this as well in the future. Where can they find out more information about this, your journey currently? Are there any particular social media sites or anything where people can find out more about it? Do you want to flag post this so then people can maybe find out more about it?
Our site is called withleah.com.
Okay.
So if you just search up on Google, that's where you can access all information about what the app is and what are the different features, and that's also where the waitlist is. So you can sign up to be part of our beta test waiting list. And if you follow myself, Vedant, on LinkedIn, and also Nivedya on LinkedIn, and we kind of post about our journey and the behind the scenes. So we're currently 5 days away from launch as we speak.
Amazing.
Our initial launch. So please look out for it and interact with our posts and comment, repost. So it's really going to help.
No,
But I think
definitely.
sharing this with as many people that you know possible would be something we'd really appreciate.
No, definitely. I think everyone should get behind it. And what I'll do is I'll put in all those in the, because I'll probably put this on YouTube. So I'll put it in the descriptions with your socials and the websites, yours and Nvidia's as well. And so people can find out more information and follow you guys for your works as well. Be, I think, really helpful. So everyone get behind them and support them, because I think it's really important. They've come up with a really good solution for something, and it will help, the future of women's health and what's to offer kind of. So I think that's really amazing what you've already achieved in a new second year into medicine. So yeah, really well done on that. And I really, good luck with it all. And I'm sure it's going to be a success going forward. So keep working hard. Now, I know we're getting to it's over an hour now. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of get away from all of that and find a bit more personal, make it a bit more fun. What would be like one fun fact about you that most people wouldn't know, even Abdullah wouldn't know?
Okay, that's a hard one. I guess I do figure skating. That's one of
Okay,
the yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's one of the unknown ones. A lot of people get
Amazing.
surprised when I mention that. But no, I'm grade 8 figure skater, and I
Nice.
absolutely love
Amazing.
going onto the ice. It's something I
Yeah.
really enjoy.
You used to play the flute as well, right? Am I right? I
Yeah,
forgot.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
still
yeah,
do.
yeah.
I still play
Yeah, you
the
used to play the
bantry,
flute.
the Indian flute.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, yeah, I've got quite a few hobbies I try and maintain. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
amazing. And I think I saw something about poetry. I think you're getting involved in some poetry.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
recognized by, what was that about? What was it? What did you do? Can
yeah,
you
yeah.
tell us about
So
that?
essentially, it was one on a certain day, and then I suddenly had this brainwave. I was like, why not try and become a poet as well for a bit? So I ended up applying to the Delhi Poetry Slam, which is arguably one of the most prestigious poetry competitions in India. And like, I knew I wasn't really going to get anywhere with it, so I was like, might as well just, it's
Yeah,
£20 fee, I might as well just do it. So I did do that, and then I suddenly clocked the next morning that I had just signed myself up to that, so I kind of do need to submit a poem.
yeah,
And the thing is, I don't write in Hindi. I cannot write in Hindi. I
yeah,
can speak, but I can't write. So
yeah,
the next few weeks was me every day trying to come up with a few lines, which
yeah,
I would type in English, but like the phonetics would be Hindi. And over a few weeks, I eventually did come up with a poem, and I ended up sending it off. And somehow it ended up getting recognized quite well by the Delhi Poetry Slam. So I
fair
was really,
enough.
really surprised about that. And what that just kind of taught me again was sometimes in life, if I sat there and I thought that through with rationality, that I was potentially wasting £20, which I could have spent somewhere else, I wouldn't really have gotten anywhere with this,
Hmm.
right? And I think that's what I try and say to people: think a bit less about things. Right? If there's something that you think is something you really want to do, just do it, right? There's no point in spending 10 hours.
Absolutely.
Could it work? Could it not work? And stop caring about what people think about you. I think that's one of the biggest things I've seen in people. Too many times the question isn't, do I want to do it? It's more like, what will people say if I do this certain thing? And I'm like, people will dislike what you do and give you hate anyways, no matter what you do in life. If you go out to the groceries in pajamas, they're still gonna hate you, right? No matter what you do, there will be a subset of people in the world who will
Yeah,
not be happy with what you're doing. And it's
absolutely.
just a bullet you have to bite. And I think just putting yourself out there and doing stuff, that's the best. If you like it, just do it.
Absolutely, and I think that's a really very a lot of truth in that, because in life you can never make everyone happy, and if you really want to do something, just do it, because at the end of the day, unless you start, it's never going to get started. So you might as well give it a try. Life is too short. So 100% agree with you on that. Any final words of encouragement for young people in general, or aspiring medics, if you want to make it more specific? Yeah, any general words of encouragement? Final words.
Yeah, I think there's like 2 points that I want to kind of hit, right? And these have been the main realizations I've had. It's the first thing is prestige of what institutions you go to don't really matter. What matters is what you end up doing there, right? A lot of people in life will rely on their talent, right? You'll meet people who are incredibly talented with different things. But the weird thing is a lot of people who are incredibly talented don't end up actually doing that well in life. And the reason isn't because they didn't have the capability, it's because they relied on their talent way too much. Talent will only get you so far. What will actually get you success is working hard. It's showing up every day, because not everyone will show up every day.
Mm,
People who are extremely talented, generally speaking, will not show up every day because they know they're already good enough, right? The people who come every day and work extremely hard are the people who are going to make what they want to get from life. And that's my biggest thing to people. Work hard, right? Working hard is literally something you can do, no matter what position in life you are. Whatever goal you have, if you work hard towards it, you might not get to the complete dream you wanted, right? But you'll get somewhere close to it. It's like an arrow. When you shoot it, you're aiming higher. It might land a bit lower, but that's fine. That's life, right?
Yeah.
Just work as hard as you can.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I wanted to say was that, look, everyone's destined to fail at a certain point, right? No matter how good you are, no matter how much you work hard for things, you're gonna fail at some point. It's just an obvious answer, right? And being able to realize that failure is a part of life and there's things I can learn from it, that's something that's very important, because failure is like a teacher, right? There are a lot of people who will be afraid of failure, and what they end up doing is they end up walking through life, right, with a nice cane, making sure they never fall. But the problem is they don't reach very far. The people who do reach very far are people who run like crazy. They end up falling as well, not to say they end up getting hurt as well, but they end up getting back up and run even faster, right? It's better to run in life than be scared and just keep walking. That's kind of like what I'd want to really stress to everyone else.
Amazing. I think,
like, I'm not special. That's one thing I really want to say. I'm just a normal kid, right? A normal kid who's been working hard and has been taking every chance. I failed a lot as well. Me and you are not very different. Like, you can be way better than me, and that's something I can guarantee.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you look at some of the successful people in this world, whether they be athletes or businesses or what have you, they worked hard behind the scenes and they failed multiple times probably. Muhammad Ali didn't just become great over time. He used to go for a 5-mile run every single day, and over the years that became a success for him to achieve what he had achieved. And many other people we could use as examples here.
100%.
So 100%, I think failure is a way of learning. It's a teacher, like you mentioned, and amazing ways to kind of learn from it. Definitely. Now, thank you so much for that. I think that's really, really helpful. You've been really, inspirational in this episode, and I really wanted to say thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to reconnect and hear your story, really. And I know we've been following each other on LinkedIn, and we've been sharing, messages here and there, which is really nice to always hear back from ex-students, definitely. And I just want to say your insights and experience have been incredibly invaluable. And I'm sure for our listeners, I hope this episode really gives you some sort of clarity and confidence and inspiration to medicine and all the other aspects of productivity you mentioned about. And for those of us that are listening in today, don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with somebody who might need to hear it. And I think so many people can take lessons from this. And so until next time, I want you to stay always curious, like Vedant was always curious. Keep learning and just look after yourselves, because it's important. And yeah, just keep going, keep doing what you're doing, and don't stop. And I think never let failure stop you from anything. But yeah, thank you so much, Vedant. And it's been really, really helpful.